Welcome back, everyone. Welcome. All right, so we have Bryan Alix, and Bryan is a person with lived experience, is one of our facilitators of the support group, and is a director on our board. Bryan recently completed 22 and a half years of service with the Canadian Armed Forces, retiring as a petty officer first class. In the span, he has also completed a Bachelor of Military Arts and Sciences at the Royal Military College of Canada. With a strong background in leadership and shared experiences, Bryan has been co-facilitating the Society's weekly peer support group since 2021. He also administratively supports the Society as a member of the fundraising committee, helping to secure funding for our programs and services. So I will turn it over to Bryan now, who will share his story with us. So I'll turn it over to you now, Bryan. Thank you.
Hi,
Thank you for joining us.
thanks for having me. I've thoroughly enjoyed my volunteer experience with society, and when the event came open this year, I thought, yeah, it's important if we want to eliminate stigma and if we want to, break the barriers, then it's important to share stories. So, as hesitant as I was, I'm glad I'm doing this. What I thought I'd talk about today is. My path through diagnosis. It seems like a lot of our support groups that we have, it's a topic that frequently comes up. And there's some striking similarities that I see with my own path that people raise. Um, Over the years, I've received diagnosis for alcohol, substance abuse, pain, depression, anxiety, adjustment disorder, CPTSD, and BPD. So it wasn't just a straight line diagnosis to BPD. It evolved quite a bit over the years. Um, and it really came to a culmination, I'd say, in about 2016. I was feeling a lot of pain. I had a lot of back pain, and it limited my abilities. And I was in a depressed state, and that's what really got me seeking treatment. My wife actually put an ultimatum to me that I needed to seek treatment, and because I wasn't doing well, I felt like I was an angry old dog. Licking his wounds and barking at anyone that it came too close. Um, and I wasn't living well. I felt like I was constantly invalidated. I felt like I was constantly being persecuted. I just generally didn't feel well, and eventually suicidal ideations came into play. And sometimes it was small. Sometimes it was as I was driving down the road, I'd think, well, what if I drove in front of a vehicle, or if I was walking down the street, or if I stepped in front of one? And thoughts like this kept creeping into my mind. And as much as I tried to block it away, as much as I tried to hide it, they were still there and still pervasive. Um, so I went into my hospital and I chatted with my doctor and I explained about the pain I was having, about the suicidal ideation, and but I was very reluctant to share too much because I felt well, obviously the stigma around it. I didn't want people at work knowing. I didn't want my family to know. I wanted to carry on with my life. I enjoyed my job. I enjoyed my work, but it was a big stressor in my life, and it affected a lot of my mindset and how I was viewing things and different angles from what I was viewing, and it was tough because I was holding these things in, and that first step to treatment was really important because it got me onto some medications that were starting to help. That alleviated the pain a little bit. That helped with my depression, give me a little bit of a mood boost. But at the same time, I also found that it increased my impulsivity and increased different actions and behaviors that I was trying to eliminate from my life. And so the diagnosis kept evolving. Then we looked at my anxiety for a little while, and how that was affecting me. And so while I was going through the depression anxiety diagnoses, I was engaged in CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. And it helped me analyze a lot of things that were happening in my lives, and allowed me to view things from different lenses, from different angles, to take a pause and ask myself whether or not I really was being disrespected, if I really was being invalidated. And it did help, but there was still something. There was still a piece that was missing, because I was working on these things. I was doing the homework that my therapists were giving me. I was engaged. I was doing what I should be doing, but I still didn't feel right. And and so I went through different medication changes, and they had a variety of side effects. And it was a bit of a trial and error, where I'd see what medication would give me improvements in mood, would improve my depressed or anxious states, and the side effects that went along with them, and trying to balance out which medications were effective. And in all that, while talking with my psychiatrist, she mentioned that this could possibly be BPD, and made some flippant comment along the lines of, "Well, there's no medication for this anyway, so there's nothing we can do." And that really kind of set me back, and made me even more afraid. And then I started reading things online about the diagnosis and the stigma that went with it, and I was scared. I really was. But I started reading books. I started looking deeper into it, and found out that I did identify with a lot of the criteria associated with BPD, and I was having those issues and those problems, and it wasn't just from 2016 onwards. I could identify parts of my life that the criteria of BPD was fitting, and it made me seek out further information support. And one of the few resources is the BPD Society of BC, and the in-person meetings that they were doing, and now they're online. But when I walked into there, and I was a little afraid, and I was scared, but it was a very welcoming experience. The people there were great at welcoming people into the group. And as the group unfolded, I kept identifying with more people's shares. And I kept thinking to myself, wow, that sounds like something that I'm experiencing, or that I have experienced. And by the end of it, I didn't feel alone anymore. For a long time, I was afraid to share any of my experience. I was afraid to open up about intrusive thoughts, about suicidal ideation, because I thought I'd be tied up and put in a rubber room for life. I really, I don't think I quite expected that bad, but my expectations were pretty scary, and it was just a nice sense of belonging. So I kept coming back to those meetings, and I kept discussing things with my therapist. And what the meetings did is it allowed me to attach specific scientific names with what I was experiencing, because as I was experiencing, I didn't know about intrusive thoughts. I didn't know about dissociation. I didn't know about all these things. I was experiencing it, and I was feeling it, but I couldn't put a tag on it. And so after a while of doing some research online, reading some books, going to the meetings, I was able to open up to my therapist, and get some more help and treatment. And part of the treatment I received was a DBT, or dialectical based therapy. And for me, it was quite a step outside of my comfort zone and what I was used to. And going in and learning about meditation, learning about distraction techniques, and it all seemed pretty hippie and far out there for me. And I was a tough guy in the Navy. These aren't things that I'm supposed to, be needing to do or having to do. But as I shedded some of that resistance and started trying some of these distraction techniques, started to try some of the different skills outlined in DBT, then I noticed, life was getting better, and my experience was improving, and I wasn't so withdrawn, and I wasn't so scared to be out in the world anymore. And I was able to head things off at the pass before they became problems, or as intrusive thoughts were happening, then I could employ some of the techniques and break a thought pattern. I went through a period of time where I was extremely depressed, and situations that were happening to me at work led me to being hospitalized at PES. Because I was having homicidal ideations and suicidal ideations. My frustration levels were through the roof, and I felt lost. And it wasn't until I had the DBT and I had some skills that I was really able to pull myself out of that darkness and that despair. And even now, it's not something that that just goes away. I know a lot of folks like to talk about recovery of BPD or whatnot, but I don't see it necessarily as a recovery. I see it as an evolving journey that is always going to change. And so, whether or not my final diagnosis is BPD, my final diagnosis is adjustment disorder, CPSD, it doesn't really matter to me anymore. At first, it mattered to me because I wanted to know specifically what I needed to do and what I needed to get back to where I was before. But the whole idea is I couldn't go back to where I was before because it wasn't healthy and it wasn't what I needed. And I had to see a path ahead and a future ahead with my DBT skills. And regardless of the diagnosis, what my path has done for me is it's given me different tools to target the behaviors that I want to target, and get to a point where I'm more in it and with it, and able to be there for my family, for my friends, for my work, for my volunteerism. And it's important for me that I don't go back to the way I was, and that I carry on with this evolving path to wellness, and that there are going to be peaks and valleys, and that's going to be normal. Um, and yeah, regardless of the diagnosis, um, it was an evolutionary path, and I'm on a good path right now.
I'm just wondering, what is something that you would like someone newly diagnosed or still struggling with BPD to know?
Well, like most stuff on the internet, if you Google it enough, it all leads to cancer or AIDS. And BPD is no different. There's a lot of scary stuff out there on the internet. Sometimes people in the news, can be portrayed in one way or another. But there seems to be a lot of negative stigma surrounding BPD. And for anyone newly diagnosed, I'd say take a lot of that with a grain of salt. And just like many other mental disorders and mental health issues, there's always a wide range and a gamut of the spectrum, and everyone is going to be different on that spectrum. And different types of borderline, quiet borderline. And there is the 9 criteria, and typically you need 5 to be diagnosed out of the 9. But it doesn't mean that and if you have 4 criteria or 3 criteria or 6, it doesn't make your experiences any less.
Mhm.
Um, and what I would suggest to people is yeah, take the diagnoses and find out some supports with it, and find out what one can do on their own to kind of help themselves out a bit. Because training therapies can have some long wait lists. So I'd suggest to people get some good reading material, and a lot of that can be found on our BPD website, bpdbc.ca. There's some excellent resources there that have been kind of vetted and approved by those of us on the board and involved in the website and whatnot. So we can vouch that they're good resources.
People
And
with experience, yeah.
yeah, people that live with experience have endorsed. So I would say to start there, and not put too much stock into some of the more horrible things that are kind of linked to BPD online.
Mhm.
Uh, and because yeah, there's a pretty deep rabbit hole that people can go down to as far as what BPD is and how it can affect people.
Mhm.
But regardless of how one is living with BPD, I think it's important to seek out the resources and seek out treatment options, and to begin the journey. Because the faster one begins their journey into treatment, into therapy, the faster one can feel better in their own selves, in their own body, and that's a tough experience. But it's
And you
one
brought up
that,
a really good point about stigma, and I was wondering if there's anything you can share about maybe your experience with stigma or what you've seen in the community around BPD and stigma.
well, in the armed forces, it was unofficially said that your first step to mental health is your first step out the door. And I didn't believe that. And it really depended on who I had for supervisors. Initially, I didn't tell anyone that I was under treatment. People knew I had a bad back and I was going to the doctor every couple of weeks. But beyond that, they didn't know anything. And as word kind of got out, um, yeah, it got kind of worse for me. But I wasn't fully treated at the time, and I had some contributing factors that I brought upon myself. But I find that yeah, short answer is there is stigma with not just BPD but many mental health issues, and I've seen an evolving stance over the last 23, 24 years of how mental health is viewed and how it is treated, how it is accepted. And as a society, we've come leaps and bounds. And the forces as well came leaps and bounds from where it was to where it is now. But it doesn't mean that we don't have more work to do and more work to achieve in society to normalize discussing this and having general mental health discussions and encouraging people to seek treatment because there's a lot of folks out there that without treatment that they can't move forward. They're stuck and they're spinning their wheels, and stigma can be a barrier to doing that. But I can wholeheartedly say that even with any stigmas that I've experienced, getting the treatment and getting better for my family is probably the best thing I've ever done.
Mhm.
Ever.
You've spoken a few times about your family, and I was wondering if you wanted to speak about like being how BPD maybe played a factor in being, a partner or a dad or anything like that.
Yeah, well, I'm a very black and white thinker. I think in absolutes a lot of the time, and one of the ways it was affecting my family is I was pretty hard on them as far as expectations, and I would see any kind of rule violations for my kids as a personal slight against me. That and oh, I was a horrible dad, and horrible father because I can't get my kids to do X, Y, or Z. I'm a horrible husband because my wife, whatever. And it brought out streaks of meanness where I would kind of be snappish. My wife would remind me sometimes that I'm not at work. I'm not, the big boss. I'm not the drill sergeant. And I did. I needed some constant reminders on that. And it certainly led to me getting diagnosed. And I'm very fortunate that my family is understanding, my family is forgiving, and they could see that I was suffering. They could see that I was in pain, and I just wasn't. I wasn't available to them so often, and so it did. It affected them greatly. And it affected me in the sense that every time I would snap, then I would go over that 1,000 times in my mind, and oh, I didn't do that, and I was mean to the kids. I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have done this. And I wasn't abusive, um, but just not nice.
And we see that a lot with people in the group. They talk a lot about shame and how that's really tied to having BPD because we're so empathic. And then, we have like a moment where we're dysregulated and then have anger and then the shame and then it spirals and then there's just this loop, right?
Yeah,
and then
it is.
you're dysregulated and then it just goes back into it. So, yeah.
And it can be such a vicious circle.
Mhm.
The emotional outburst followed by the shame, which
With
goes
more
into depression, which
dysregulation, more
causes some
relationship
anxiety.
issues.
Yeah. So and I view health now as a real whole body experience that I can't treat the body without treating my mind and vice versa. So I have degenerative disc disease, and I'm constantly in pain. Every hour, every waking minute of the day, I'm in pain, and it causes some suicidal ideation. There's mornings I wake up and I wake up disappointed that I'm alive, and that's sad and horrible.
Thank you for sharing. I think it's an important discussion to have. There's a lot of co-occurrences between BPD and other mental health diagnoses or, pain disorders, fibromyalgia or
Right.
pain disorders, like it's very important or other medical conditions, so I think it's a very important topic.
Hmm. Hmm. It is, and yeah, those co-occurrences, can be pretty intense. Um, I've used alcohol to numb my pains, and to turn off my brain, so that it isn't in a spiral. Um, so yeah, lots of co-occurrences, with a variety of other pain sources, alcohol, drug sources, and yeah, it's had a great effect on me because over the years, yeah, there's a lot of things that I've done that I'm not proud of, that I've said that I'm not proud of, and that I knew instantaneously that I did something wrong or I've wronged somebody, and those instances they replay in my mind, and every now and then, there'll be an intrusive thought that, oh yeah, I wronged somebody 15 years ago, and now I'm going to spend the next hour worrying about it. Um, because that's that's happened as well. Um, and yeah, um,
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Brian. Uh, if there's nothing else, we can go into a question period of time. I mean, that was a lot. It's heavy living with BPD, and
mhm.
thank you for sharing your story. Yeah.
Well, and that's why I kind of want to focus on like the path of diagnosis, because quite often, yeah, we see it's not linear, and that it has a
Mhm.
tendency of bouncing all over the place, and
Mhm.
the more I learned, the more I opened up. The more treatment was available. The more treatment that was available, the better I started to feel in my everyday life. So
Yeah.
it
And I think it's important to talk about
yeah.
the stories so that we can break the stigma of BPD, because there's such a huge stigma attached to it. So I think, sharing your story is very courageous and it's powerful. Mm-hmm.
Well, I hope so. I hope somebody gets something out of it, and if they see any, part of themselves or any part of their journey that's similar, know that that it can have a happy ending. That just because one is bouncing around from one diagnosis to another, doesn't mean that they can't find their own solace or their own redemption in finding out resources for themselves. And anyone that sees himself, ticking off lists of criteria of BPD, can find help and can help to mitigate some of those criteria that they're experiencing. That there are lots of mitigation strategies, and that we're not alone. That there are many, many, many other people that are experiencing these things. You know the stats, Bailey, but quite often we have about 30-ish so people in our group every week. From lived experience to
You
family.
nailed it right on the head. It's our stats online right now are 30 on average of 30 people a week.
Yeah, and
We've had up to 40. There was one month there that was 40 every week. So
yeah, I've remembered a few of them where I ran out of pages to write
yeah,
down names and topics.
yeah.
So
So we
yeah,
definitely aren't alone. There's a community of people with BPD for sure, and it's up to 6% of the population of people that are living with BPD at one time.
yeah, that's massive. And when I found out that stat, I was quite shocked and surprised. But again, it also kind of lent a little bit of validation to me. I go, okay, well, this isn't so bad. If 6% of the population is living with this, and most of them are carrying on their normal everyday lives, then there's hope. I don't have to be stuck in a dark place where I'm having all these dark, intrusive thoughts. I can step out into the light and find a place where I can get back to enjoying life at times.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so breaking that stigma and getting the word out, I think is very important.
Well, there's so many strengths that people with BPD have too, and I think that's really important to highlight.
Yeah,
People
like
are very passionate and creative and giving, and
totally, and we've talked about that a few times in group about BPD being at times a bit of a superpower. And for me, it really was. I mean, my black and white thinking allowed me to make very quick decisions, uh, where I didn't flip flop or wobble because I saw things directly as they were. It allowed me to plan. The details of planning that I can get into is pretty deep, and I'll have plan A, B, C, and D all formulated, and a backup for the backup, and all that has allowed me to have some great success in life and my career. And I did. I enjoyed a very successful career, uh, and and I got to remember that and remind myself of that. You know, uh, it's not just in spite of having BPD. It's also because I had BPD that I was able to enjoy that level of success. So even though it's caused me, heartache and depression, anxiety, and whatnot, it's also been a contributor to my success. So I got to look at it from that way too, and
Mhm.
remember that it's not all negative. Um, that some of this contribute to the good parts of our lives.
Yeah. So we have one question. I know you do a lot of volunteer work for the society, and does that help your mental health in any way? Is that a contributing factor?
Yes, very much so. I didn't go to the meetings when they went online at first, and during that period, I almost felt like I was white knuckling it, like they would say in AA or NA or one of those organizations. Um, And when I came back, I recognized just how important that sense of community was, sharing experiences, sharing tips, tricks, and pointers that help people out. So when I was approached to volunteer and be a facilitator, um, I I said to myself, well, I'm pretty well put together. I can speak. I can do this. So I probably should. And sharing my experiences every week, it really brings me a level of contentment, knowing that there's at least one person in the room that I may have helped, or one person that has heard my story and will latch on to something that will give them some hope, and it really gives me a sense of community, a sense of leadership, a sense of a meaning in life too, because it's kind of my higher purpose now is to help people out where I can, and it helps with my BPD because I feel like I'm making a difference, and
We couldn't do it without you, Bryan. Thanks for everything you do.
I
Great job.
don't feel like I do much, but it does feel good, and
Yeah, you do so
it,
much. And yeah, we really appreciate all your hard work. With Bryan and I meet once a week, and we do grant writing um, and also you show up
fundraising, few
yeah, all our
administration
fundraising
things.
committees and but I mean just in general, like what you do, and sit on the board and show up every week to group and facilitate on the schedule, and yeah, so you do so much for us.
Well, I appreciate you having me, and I really enjoy being part of the team.
Yeah.
It really does feel like a community, and gives that sense of belonging. I highly encourage the group on Wednesdays, whether in person or online. The schedule's on our website and our Facebook page, so please go there and see that. And I look forward to meeting any newcomers that start up a group in the future.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Well, thank you, Bryan. And our next person will be taking a half-hour break, and then we have Lynn Bonner, a family member with lived experience and also a director on our board, at 2:30. So we'll just be taking a short break and then coming back on. And if anyone wants more information about our programs and services or to donate, you can go to our website, which is down below at bpdbc.ca. And we have one person that asked a question in the chat box about looking for a counselor if you're undiagnosed, and also like if they specialize in BPD and DBT. I think I will suggest coming back at 3:30 when we have Dr. Blaise Aguirre, who is the founding medical director of 3 East DBT Continuum. And I think that would be a great question to ask him at that time. So I'll suggest leaving that question for when he comes in, because he specializes in BPD and DBT. So yeah, thanks everyone. And thanks again, Bryan.
Thank you, Bailey, and thanks everyone for attending today. Thanks a lot, and let's get the stigma out there, or the awareness out there, to break the
And
stigma.
end the stigma.
Yes.
Great.
Thanks, Bailey. Thanks, everyone.